Welcome into the Off-Brand Sports Podcast. This is our first episode since sports are back, and we could not be happier about it. But I'm also a little bit mad about it because Marshall, over here, cost me $700 yesterday.
I didn't hear this story. I didn't hear this.
He didn't really. So, okay, Marshall and I were just making some fun bets, and he told me he was making some bet. I don't remember what it was, and I was like, oh, well, while we're making stupid bets, I'm going to put $150 on Kotkaniemi to score the first goal.
Yeah.
In that Canadiens-Pittsburgh game.
Yeah,
well,
but that was
Marshall
never...
said, don't make that bet. It's dumb.
Well,
Turns out it wasn't a dumb bet.
Yeah, Billy, but were you ever actually going to do that?
No, but I like blaming you for it.
You were getting mad at Zach and I for putting $50 on the Penguins.
Oh, that's what it was. And it wasn't even that stupid, but hey, I was right because that one didn't work.
Yeah, it was very unfortunate. That was a shot to the heart for sure.
Yeah. That was,
So, I mean, like, going right off that tangent, let's jump into that because, you know, we've talked about it constantly on this podcast. The NHL is a crapshoot to predict.
Oh, yeah.
And 4 days ago, we sat here, and I told our viewers that Edmonton over Chicago was a lock.
Yeah,
and you guys both told our viewers that Pittsburgh over Montreal was a lock. Well, we're one game into each series, and both of our teams are trailing. So that's about what predicting the NHL is often like. And some of these, like the Chicago-Edmonton game, to me was just how Chicago came out of the gate. Mm-hmm. I don't think that Pittsburgh is really in jeopardy. I think they'll bounce back. I'm not as sure about Edmonton.
That's why I called them a pretender, man. It's like... I just think that Mike Smith is Garbo. I mean, we saw that yesterday, and then their defense needs a little bit of a makeover, I guess.
I mean, it's just the lack. To me, it's the lack of anything on the wing. Like, they've got the best center depth in the NHL, in my opinion. If you count guys that are playing wing but are actually centers, you know, like your 1, 2, 3, 4 at center. If you actually played them all at center, would be McDavid, Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins, and AA, which is insane. But then your number one winger would be Kyler Yamamoto, who's played 25 games in his career, and after that you're on Zach Cassian.
Yeah, exactly, dude.
So I don't know what they got going on.
They are the epitome of just high-end talent, and then absolutely drops off after that.
Mm-hmm. Marshall was telling me last night he thinks Draisaitl ends up winning the Hart, and I kind of agreed on that based on the lack of depth that the Oilers have overall. They were carried by their top players for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he had McDavid, which everyone likes to say, well, he did it next to McDavid. He did it next to McDavid and nobody else.
Well, and then half the season he wasn't even playing with McDavid.
Right.
Yeah, so he did it all alone. I mean, he had Nuge. Nuge is a little bit of help, but not like... Well, I mean, Nuge isn't more than like having
like
Rantanen and Landeskog or whatever for half the season.
Not even close to having Rantanen and Landeskog.
Exactly.
But
yeah, I think you're saying Burakovsky. Like it's probably a little bit better comparable.
Mm-hmm. Nuge is probably a little bit better. Yeah, but still
a little, but not like in that same kind of league.
Yeah. But yeah, so yesterday's sports betting, hockey was back. I was like, dude, I was telling them like, boys, I'm 750 on the Penguins. Hockey is back. Fuck yeah. Let's go.
And I said, don't do that, Marshall.
Yeah. Well, and then I got Zach to hop on the train, too.
Yeah, Marshall got me into it. I was like, you know what? That is a good bet. No. You know what? To pay out $91, let's do this.
Okay,
and
but
of course, they get daggered in overtime.
What if this is a repeat of last year's playoffs? Where, like, because these are... Both Edmonton and Pittsburgh are the highest remaining like play-in seeds, and then playing against obviously the lowest. So what if this is a repeat, like
just like last year when every wild card team won, every single division winner lost.
Chicago comes out, beats Edmonton, and Montreal.
Well, that's the one I could see, Penguins. But like Billy said, I don't see Pittsburgh coming back, or I don't see Montreal finishing the series out against Pittsburgh.
I just don't think. At some point, I mean, Montreal I don't think has the talent to beat Pittsburgh. Like, Pittsburgh, Edmonton as the 5 seed in the West is not really the same as the 5 seed in the East. The East is more top heavy and a little bit deeper.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, while I don't know that there's a massive difference between Chicago and Montreal, I think they're both pretty bad. I think there is a massive difference between Pittsburgh and Edmonton, which is why I think one of them will bounce back and the other really needs to step it up here.
What happens here if Edmonton gets knocked out? What do you think?
They probably win the lottery. I mean, I don't know.
Probably, but like I'm just talking with like rumors surrounding McDavid.
He's there for like another at least 5 years before he's like gone for
You
sure.
think so?
He signed a 12-year contract or something crazy like that.
Yeah, but I will say if
This
what
is not
happens
his
this
last
year
year at
becomes
Edmonton.
like, if this becomes a pattern, then once that contract is up, he is out.
Right, and you could say Edmonton's been on a losing pattern for a decade and a half now.
They
Since
have
2006.
been. And that's the thing. That's
They
like
have.
what's going on with Jack Eichel. You're spoiling talent.
I agree.
Yeah.
but-
All-time
yeah.
talent, especially with McDavid,
That's
because
true.
Billy and I have talked about it. Like, I think McDavid's the most talented hockey player the league has ever seen.
I would agree
I
with
agree.
that.
Not necessarily.
Look,
he's
like
not
no
gonna
one's
put
ever
up
going to
Gretzky,
dominate in the way that
No.
Gretzky did statistically.
because that's the '80s.
But exactly. But as far as sheer talent, it is hard to disagree with Connor McDavid. It's, I mean, look, when's the last time that we had a number one player in the NHL that was this far above the rest? You know, Crosby was the best player, and it wasn't really a debate. But other guys were close. You know,
You definitely
Ovechkin
had
was
that.
close.
Yeah, you had that debate for sure.
yeah, with Ovechkin for
I
sure.
mean, yeah, I mean, it wasn't. There was a little bit of a debate, but I feel like
Well-
most people at this point would agree Crosby was slightly better. Ovi definitely the better goal scorer.
the first 5 to 7-ish years, there was absolutely that debate that was going on.
Yeah,
just because
that's
like
fair.
they were really intertwined. They entered the league at the same time because of the
Yeah.
lockout and all that. Ovechkin won the Calder at that time, so it's like that's kind of when it started. Whole
Yeah,
Crosby
and that's exactly
Ovechkin
what I mean,
debate.
though. You know, at least then there was a conversation going on. Like right now, if you ask anyone who the best player in the league is, anyone in the right mind is going to say McDavid. And like,
Well, I think there's a few people
it's
that
not
might
common
say
to have
McKinnon.
someone.
Yeah,
They'd be wrong though.
I don't know about that.
I mean,
I feel like McDavid is, at least comparatively, compared to any other time that I've been watching hockey,
Yeah.
he is far and away,
I
at
would
least
agree with that.
to the majority of people, the number one.
Far and away from McKinnon, you believe that?
not like
Talent wise, yeah.
see,
Not
I
like
would
he's so much better than McKinnon,
I
but
would
like
be hard pressed to say that
he
it's
is
far and away.
noticeably better.
I would
But
be
I
hard-
don't think that there is. I don't think you could make a solid argument that McKinnon is better. You could say, "Oh, McKinnon is almost as good," or "McKinnon is close to as good,"
don't
but I
know.
don't think that you could say McKinnon is better than McDavid.
There's
think
definitely,
you definitely
some,
could
I
say
feel
that,
like
yeah.
I feel like just all around game, McKinnon definitely has aspects of his game that's better than McDavid's. His shot, his defense has definitely taken another level, especially this season.
That's true.
I mean, just his lateral quickness is pretty insane. His acceleration,
All right,
acceleration.
let me ask you this: if you could go back to 2013, 2015 area, and you got to pick, you had the number one overall pick in 1 year, whether it was 2013 and 2015, and you know what these two players are going to become, which year do you want that pick? Do you want McDavid or do you want McKinnon?
McDavid.
That's what. There you
That's
go.
okay. The thing is I'm not disagreeing with you, but I don't think the margin is as wide as you think it is.
I don't think that the margin is big. I just think that it's big and it's there. There is a margin.
I understand what you're saying here.
McDavid is a step above.
McDavid is further away from McKinnon than Crosby was with Ovechkin.
Yeah. There you go.
Okay, that's fair.
That's
But
kind of what
still, people can argue McKinnon is better than McDavid.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely,
Definitely
and
an argument
that's-
that can be had.
it's absolutely
Yeah.
an argument that could be
I
had.
think the
but
majority of people would disagree, but I think that as far as popular opinion is concerned, I think that McDavid is the biggest number one gap we've seen in a long time.
How about the league before Crosby and McDavid entered though? Who was the clear cut number one then? That
That
Lindstrom.
was like Lemieux and Sakic in that
Yeah.
era, right?
I mean, Yzerman, Sakic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Lindstrom. I feel like the gaps in that era were a lot closer. The late '90s, early 2000s, the gap was a lot closer
Oh yeah, I mean, go back to 2003 and like who's the best player in the league in 2003? Like
Yeah.
probably Lemieux, but maybe Sakic, maybe. I mean, I'm probably seeing Sakic with some burgundy goggles on here, but you know, you've got Stevie Y. You got a lot of really good talent, and it was all in a cluster. There wasn't
Like,
necessarily as clear cut a number one.
yeah, there wasn't the Gretzky or the Lemieux. Like, well, Lemieux was at his tail end. Of
Yeah,
his
it was
career
Lemieux
there.
in his tail end. It wasn't Lemieux in his prime.
Like Yager, you can make arguments for.
Mm-hmm.
So there was just like a bunch of. It's not necessarily saying that the talent was better then, but there was just a disparity of players that you could make arguments for being the best player in the league. Whereas now, and especially like after the McDavid and not McDavid, the Ovechkin and Crosby era, that this is when the gaps have started to like actually kind of widen a little bit more, just because these guys are just all time talents.
Yeah, which is interesting, and especially with I don't know, some of the talent coming into the league is really exciting as well. So I'm kind of curious to see like where this debate goes, because if there is someone, I mean, Marshall, we've had this conversation before, and I know we disagree a little bit on it, but I think if there's someone that does come to challenge McDavid, it's going to be Shane Wright coming in that 2022 draft class.
Or Lafreniere.
Yeah, I think it's harder for a wing though. I don't know, like
Yeah,
as
well-
good as a wing can be, I think a center's always going to have a little bit of an edge.
I don't know. I'm not as high on Shane Wright as you are. I think he's going
Yeah.
to be really good. I think I see Shane Wright as a little bit of like an amped up Mark Scheifele, which is like definitely not a knock, and more like of a consistent Mark Scheifele. Like Mark Scheifele's, his really good seasons. That's kind of who I see Shane Wright as being. But
Yeah.
just always like being there and just a little bit better. But that's kind of the style of play that I've seen Shane Wright as. So
I think that's fair. I think that like that's a stylistic comparison, and I think he's definitely a step above. I don't know, like I think that style can be just as effective. He won't flash as much as McDavid does,
Yeah.
but I'm curious to see what kind of numbers he puts up. I think he'll probably be a little bit of a better goal scorer. I don't know if he'll be better than McDavid at goal scoring, but if he is better than McDavid, it's going to be because he's a better goal scorer.
yeah, that.
But you touched on Mark Scheifele there, so let's go ahead and transition a little bit here, move along, and talk about his teammate. Blake Wheeler went down after taking a skate to the leg from Matthew Tkachuk. I don't know if you guys saw that.
Yeah, it wasn't Wheeler though. It was Scheifele.
Yeah, it was Scheifele.
It was Scheifele? Oh, I think I mixed them up.
Yeah.
Oh, well then even better. It was an even better transition that I just ruined, but okay.
Yeah, it was Scheifele.
Did you guys see what Paul Maurice said post game?
I did not.
He said that it was an intentional kicking motion and that Matthew Tkachuk is a dirty fucking player.
I
Didn't
do
we
not
already-
agree.
I do not agree. I think he was
do
over
not
the
agree
line
at
there.
all.
Way over the line. I
Yeah.
don't think he did that
I-
intentionally at all.
Yeah, that's like something that I don't think. That is a freak accident, and it's
Right.
because it's Matthew Tkachuk that a lot of people want to say it's intentional because he's
Right.
that guy. He's a rat.
And to me,
but
Matthew Tkachuk
that's
is
not
not
something you
a
do.
Matt Cook. Like, he's not out there to hurt people like Matt
yeah,
Cook
exactly.
was.
Tkachuk is a rat in the way that he likes to hack you in the back of the legs
Yeah.
and get under your
Yeah.
skin. Tkachuk is not kicking people with
Yes.
his blades, and
Exactly. Sticking his knees
I don't
out.
like the guy because I'm not a fan of the Tkachuks because I don't like rats, but like I understand why people do. But that was not intentional, and I don't think there's like that's like when you're a kid on the playground and that one kid always trips while you're playing sports or whatever, and he's always whining, "You did that on purpose," and like that's like one of my biggest pet peeves, and that's how I feel like people are acting about this. It's like, okay, yes, it sucks, it's a rough play, and I feel real bad for him, but that was not intentional. It was an accident.
Totally agreed. I think it's a little bit out of line for Paul Maurice to come out and say that. Like he says he says you can't see it on the TV stream, but check the blue line camera. You can see intentional kicking. And even after looking at the blue line camera, I'm still like, Paul Maurice, bro, that was totally irresponsible to come out
Yeah,
and say
like, he
something
probably-
like that.
He probably stumbled a bit and it dragged his leg up. It's no, that was not an intentional thing. All right,
Definitely not.
so we've been on the NHL for a little while here. Let's move into the NBA, and we've gotten some good NBA games.
Yeah.
One of them, the 150-point overtime game.
Yeah.
The Rockets.
And
That was a fun one to
Mavericks.
watch. It went real late. I don't know. What did you guys think of that one? What
That was
you guys got to watch it live? I only got to watch the highlights.
Yeah, that was an insane game. I was cleaning for most of the game, but I definitely like took some breaks and tuned in. But just every time I like took a 5 minute break, the score just jumped by 15 to 20 points. It seemed like it was just, and I think at the half it was the highest scoring NBA game maybe ever. I could definitely be wrong on that, but it was at least the highest scoring first half NBA game in the last like 10 years or something. But yeah, that was a game with absolutely zero defense and just a bunch of scoring, which is pretty pleasant for the viewers to watch.
And honestly, that's kind of what the bubbles looked like a little bit. There's
Yeah.
been a lot of offense going on. There's been, I mean, almost every team that's played has scored 110 points,
There, I
with
don't
the
think there's
exception of a couple.
yeah, I don't think there's been a team that hasn't scored 100 points at least yet.
The Utah Jazz.
Oh, yeah.
Well, they scored in their first game, but they didn't yesterday.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah,
That was-
they're and then the Lakers as well when they lost another game I want to talk
Last
about, but
night,
we'll
yeah.
hold off on that. The so there have been two games so far that one team hasn't scored 100 points. Nobody has won with less than 100 points. And again, all but two of the losers have hit that mark. So we've seen a lot of scoring. I was a little curious going into the bubble whether it would be, the shooters are a little bit rusty or maybe the defense is a little bit rusty. And it seems to be the defense that's struggling and the
Yeah.
shooters are
Right.
rolling.
And going in, I just want to touch on maybe a trend that we could see going into the bubble more often. In the very beginning, the MLS's back tournament was very, very, very high scoring to start, and I think we could see that in the same sort of fashion in the NHL and the NBA in this beginning part of the tournament.
well, so
Yeah, and I mean, even the NHL games we've seen, the Blackhawks Oilers was 6-4.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and Zach, you kind of bring up a good point there. I think the trend will kind of stay consistent, where as like in the beginning stages of the MLS, like what did they call it? MLS
The
is
MLS
back or
is
something.
back, yeah.
Yeah, the MLS is back tournament. These were kind of games that weren't like so important, like they were still just kind of seeding games and round robin type of games. But then once they actually got into the bracket style of games and like games started to get more important, um, then I think we could see some of the scoring kind of drop off once like the game intensifies. And I think that can stay like pretty consistent with the NHL and the NBA. Once the NBA gets out of their 8 game seeding type of little bracket thing that they're doing right now, and then the NHL gets out of their like play in and their round robin games. Once the games
Yeah.
start to like actually like mean a little bit more, I think we'll kind of see some different schemes and like tighter defense.
Yeah, and it also just gives them a little bit of time to tighten it up.
Yeah.
The systems, they're not putting new systems in place or anything, but they're definitely kind of relearning to an extent. So it's going to take a little bit of time to tighten up their defensive game, and I think that's part of why it's been a little bit high scoring. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But I know I hinted at it a little bit. The Raptors over the Lakers was one that I did not see coming. I thought after the
Actually,
Lakers
yeah.
beat the Clippers, I thought they had a real good chance to go 8-0.
I actually bet on that game for the Raptors to win. It was part of my parlay.
Really?
It was part on a parlay,
Hey.
but that was one of the games that I actually hit on the parlay, and the other ones, Penguins, did not hit on.
Oh,
So
no.
yeah, but I don't know. I think the Raptors are pretty freaking deep, and I think part of the reason that the Clippers didn't beat the Lakers the other day is just like because of the guys that they were missing. Like once they get Lou Williams back and Montrezl Harrell, I could be wrong on that, but once they get them back and some of their like key depth pieces, then the Clippers are just gonna outshine the Lakers.
I think that's fair. What do you think? Does this win mean much for the Raptors? I know that we already said they were kind of borderline contenders in the East to begin with. After this win, if they can beat the Lakers, I feel like they have a solid chance to beat the Bucks. And I think that, to me, this just means, hey, the East might be a little bit closer than we may have thought.
Yeah. I think it's a big win for them. I think people are still overlooking the Raptors, and I call them a contender for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people seem to forget it's like they won the NBA championship last year, albeit like they were missing, like the Golden State Warriors were missing Clay and KD for really good chunks of the series, but and the Raptors did lose Kawhi, so that's definitely another key factor. But they still like have a lot of their core pieces, and a lot of their core pieces have taken big steps forward. And they still have Nick Nurse, who I think is one of the more underrated coaches in the entire NBA. So, I mean, if Toronto, like Billy, you've been saying, this whole like 4 month, 3 month type of like vacation off season type thing, if that could give like Toronto's like younger players like a Siakam a chance to kind of enter a quote unquote next season type of deal, then
Mm-hmm.
and he takes like another step forward, then this could be a pretty scary team.
Yeah, I think so too. And like you called them a contender, I called them a pretender. And I remember the reason that I gave was without Kawhi, they probably would have lost to the Sixers. And now I'm eating my words on that for sure. I feel like the Raptors can come back and really make some noise in this tournament for sure.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Are you guys following the whole Zion situation at all?
I have not been much.
Mm-mm.
I know he didn't play that last game.
Well, he's just like not playing many minutes right now, and like he looks frustrated on the bench. His teammates on the floor like are looking back over on him, like being frustrated that he's not out on the floor. And I just
Yeah.
kind of think that's a little bit poor management here. It's like if Zion is to get into game shape during these playoffs and then to make a push for that 8 seed, they're gonna need him. And like just kind of limiting his minutes, getting him in there in short bursts is not really doing anything for himself or the team.
Yeah, and I mean, trust the player. When the player is visibly frustrated because they're not playing, and it's a player of that caliber, at some point you just gotta say, well, he knows that he's ready to play. You gotta let him.
Yeah, exactly. Especially being supposed to be the next face of the league, really. Not only like the Pelicans,
Exactly.
but the league. So,
Yeah.
and the NBA
I mean,
was
I
like
think,
going out of the way. Sorry, Billy, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I listened to Colin Cowherd make a good point about this, and he said even if Zion isn't like the best player in the NBA, he has that natural charisma that makes him a superstar.
Yeah,
with
exactly.
just the good enough to be a superstar because he's very very good, and he's just got that natural swagger to him.
Yeah, he does. Kind of, yeah, Colin, I was listening to that same thing that he was mentioning. It's like Giannis doesn't, Luka doesn't. They just don't have that, like, kind of, that swagger that you need, like a LeBron or a Kobe. Just that, like, absolute personality that could elevate, like, your status in the league to a whole different level.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, the NBA was, like, catering to the Pelicans. They got them, like, a primetime game on opening day
Mm-hmm.
just because of Zion. And then
Yeah, and then they said, "Oh, we're just not going to play him."
yeah, so that's a little bit disappointing. I really want to watch Zion play some more. The minutes that he has been playing, he looks phenomenal.
Yeah, he's a player that I'm really excited about in the future. Like,
Yeah.
I think that Pelicans could be fun to watch just because of him, and I can't wait.
I mean, they got some key pieces coming back to them too, though. With like, I mean, Lonzo and Brandon Ingram took a huge step forward this season, like making an All-Star game. They got some players coming back and a bunch of picks too. So
Mm-hmm.
the
Yeah,
Pelicans could
they're-
be pretty interesting in the future.
Yeah, they're not a threat this year, but here soon we're going to be talking about them with the real contenders in the league, I think.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, the NBA has actually been really fun to watch. We've been saying it's really high scoring, but it's really exciting too. There's been some like crazy plays. Yeah, it's good to get the NBA back, and it seems like their bubble's working out pretty well right now.
Yeah, which is good. I was a little bit concerned about the bubble in Orlando, but so far so good. And I think like we're kind of past that point where if something was going to go wrong for in one of these bubbles, whether it be the NHL or the NBA, it already would have. So I think that we've gotten this far means that we're probably fine.
Mm-hmm. I guess I got a quick question. What has your favorite game of the restart been so far?
Out of like any sport,
Pretty much basketball and hockey. I'm asking
Okay.
the recent restart.
The ones that I have actually watched, I really enjoyed watching the Lakers and Clippers game.
Yes,
just
that's
because
what
of
I
the
was gonna say.
yeah, just because of the star power.
Hmm.
I thought that was really exciting because I wasn't able to really watch too much of the Houston and Dallas game, and I feel like maybe if I would have, that would definitely take first on the pecking order. But yeah, out of the games I've watched so far, that game stands out. No NHL games have really stood out to me yet.
For me, it
Yeah.
was because I love Carolina. It was that Carolina and New York game, and it was coming into this. I was a little bit worried. Carolina has a reputation for not being able to handle New York. They came out and they made a statement and basically said, we may have struggled with you in the regular season, but we're legit contenders and you're not. So they came out, punched them right in the face, and I mean the score was only 3-2, but Carolina dominated that game.
Yeah. What do you think about the decision of playing Lundqvist?
Well, Shesterkin was hurt, I think.
Oh.
It was unclear because Shesterkin was scratched. Presumably, he's got something the information is impossible to come by at this point because they're being so secretive. But I think it seems to be Shesterkin was unable to play.
Yeah. I know Samsonov is out for the rest of the playoffs.
Yeah. And Crawford was apparently, and then now he's actually back, so that was a little bit weird. It's just this information, we're getting a lot of mixed messages. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. If they do get Shesterkin back, that would be big for them. I was slightly surprised that they even didn't go with Georgiev, but when you got the king there, just on reputation alone, you give him a shot, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But he had let one soft one in, but other than that, he was solid.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he is the king, and definitely not, like, a bad plan B to have. So
Yeah. I mean, hey, if your goalie situation is as good as the Rangers, where your starter's out and you have to turn to Lundqvist, then I think you're doing all right.
I mean, there are rumors of the Avs going to pick up Lundqvist at the trade deadline, so
which would
that kind of
just
sheds light on how well or how good the Rangers young goaltenders are with Georgiev. I didn't never say his name right, and Shesterkin.
Yeah, I'm jealous. I'm very jealous.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's been fun. Looking forward to some more games, and the MLB's been pretty exciting too. Pretty high scoring games.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
I mean, the Rockies are rolling, which I love. They dropped a bad one in the ninth inning little comeback thing that the Padres had going on there, but then they came back the next day and made a little bit of a statement themselves.
Yeah. I think they're playing right now too. But yeah, so the MLB's been fun. But my main topic that I wanted to get in with this episode is, like, do you guys see the MLB finishing their season?
I see them finishing, but I see them putting the season on hold for maybe 3 weeks to a month to establish some bubbles.
Yeah,
That's a good point.
I think they're going to need to.
I am a little bit more optimistic. I will say I think there's a good chance that you guys are both right. But I do think there is a chance that this can kind of just be a speed bump and that maybe they'll kind of learn a little bit from this, be a little bit more careful as they travel. Players might learn a little bit and be like, all right, we gotta cool it. When we're not playing, we gotta do our best to stay home, stay out of situations that could get us into trouble. And I think there's a chance they have a shot to be able to finish this the way they planned.
Yeah, it's just a little bit scary already seeing games postponed and canceled.
Yeah.
Only a week and a half into the season.
Phillies and the Marlins have been shut down. I mean, at some point you're right, because if they keep having to shut teams down, they're going to end up with 20 games to make up at the end of the season where you're like, all right, well, now we're doing double headers on 3 straight days because we got to get all these games in.
Yeah, so I'm not really too confident in MLB. I do think that they'll end up finishing it, but like Zach said, they'll probably end up being a hold, especially if like what happens if 3 or 4 more teams start to like have some outbreaks going on in the organization. It's just like it screws up the entire schedule in the end.
Right. I guess that kind of goes into a tweet that I was reading from one of the ESPN journalists saying that if that happens, the MLB goes into a bubble type situation, puts the season on hold. Games would end up having to be 7 innings long. Starting in the 8th inning, you'd have a runner on second. It'd be a big change. You'd be running double headers for teams on the same day. For sure, it'd be crazy.
Did you see that they already approved that for doubleheaders? Is they're going to do 7 inning games?
I think I did see that, and it's from that guy on ESPN. I can't remember his name right now, but he is a good journalist for sure.
Yeah, that's going to be a little bit odd, playing a baseball game that's
odd.
not 9 innings.
Yeah.
And they've got the runner on second in overtime going on, so that's been a little bit weird.
I kind of like that, though. I think that kind of brings a little bit of excitement.
The game.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have a problem with it. It's just a little odd to see,
Yeah, it is. But being that the MLB is not in a bubble and the NFL plans to not be in a bubble, it kind of makes me a little bit worried about the NFL as well.
I think the NFL, in my eyes, is probably looking at getting into a bubble.
I think they've got to be considering it at this point, right?
I mean, they have the benefit. They have the benefit of watching, like, what has worked and what has not worked. The MLB is an example of what has not worked, and they're not in the bubble. And so far, the NHL and the NBA are doing an absolutely fantastic job with this.
Agreed.
Exactly.
And to the NFL's point, I mean, I feel like they probably have the highest risk among players just based on roster sizes.
Yeah.
Potential spread in that in a locker room is crazy in a football team. So,
yeah,
they definitely need to get to the bubble.
If a lineman, an O lineman, or a D lineman gets it, then everyone on both temes that's on the line is getting it.
Pretty
because
much.
that's there's no sport where you're more in tight, packed in with guys and I don't know, just sweating all over them, drooling, bleeding all over them.
Basketball is definitely up there, but yeah, football is just like you were saying on the line is definitely pretty freaking close knit. So.
I know I made the suggestion to you, Marshall. So, if I were the NFL, one thing I'd be looking at is kind of rotating bubbles. So, you would start kind of in your divisions for the first 6 weeks of the season, get your divisional games out of the way. I know it's not ideal for TV ratings because you want those divisional games at the end. So, maybe even just do it for the last 6 games of the season, whatever. So you've got that for 6 weeks, and for the other 10 weeks of the season, try and group teams into 2 or 3, maybe 4 separate bubbles where these teams in these bubbles are going to play each other. You might have to tinker with the schedule a bit, just so that you've got bubbles. Whether or not you can rotate through them, so maybe spend 5 weeks in one, and then some of the teams switch. So you're like, well, we got these games out of the way, now we want them to play some of the teams in these other bubbles. And we can just switch the bubbles, closed in transport the teams on buses, whatever, and then just keep them isolated. And I think there's definitely a way to do some kind of mix of traveling but still having that bubble.
Yeah, I would agree. That's a good idea for sure. But yeah, they have to probably reconsider something else.
Right.
Because
I mean, what do you guys?
They have to be watching this, and I don't think the NFL is full of idiots. So I think they're monitoring the situation very closely, and they haven't come out and said we're considering a bubble, but I think whether they have said it or not is kind of irrelevant. I think they're definitely considering it.
Yeah, they got to be. And I kind of wanted to ask what you think the season's going to end up looking like after all these high-profile players are opting out. There's I think 8 players on the Patriots that have opted out so far, probably 5 on the Chiefs, and these are starters that we're talking about. So I was just wondering, do you guys think we're going to have a pretty normal NFL season based player-wise, or is it going to look a lot different?
I think it will depend on who opts out. If we get, we've had some good players opt out. Mm-hmm. We haven't had a legitimate superstar quarterback opt out, and that I think would be the tipping point. If a Patrick Mahomes or a Lamar Jackson or an Aaron Rodgers opts out, then we start to say, all right, so are we taking this NFL season that seriously?
Okay.
Yeah. And then even just like a high profile like wide receiver or something, like a DeAndre Hopkins or something.
Yeah. Just a massive name. Even
Yeah.
like a defensive end, like a J.J. Watt, maybe an Aaron Donald, like
Yeah.
a Von Miller. But we haven't had an absolutely massive name opt out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Breaking news here. Apparently, in the latest round of St. Louis Cardinals testing, someone had said that it is not good, quote unquote. They have multiple new positive tests.
Did that come out just now?
Yeah, like I got a
Oh,
notification
no.
on my phone, so I looked it up here. From Jeff Passan, the latest round of coronavirus tests from St. Louis Cardinals are in words of someone with the team, not good.
Oh,
Uh-oh.
jeez.
So there you go. I'm gonna have to backtrack a little bit. I said there's a chance this gets done normally, and it's looking less likely 10
Yep.
minutes later. So yeah, that's something to watch for sure. This comes out on Tuesday. We're recording it on Sunday, just so our viewers know. So if anything does come out between now and then, that's why we didn't know about it. But yeah, that's big and that's bad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
it's been fun to watch it so far, but it's not looking incredibly.
right.
Promising.
I see them shutting it down or getting bubbles established or going within the next week.
Yeah.
I say the over under on 2.5 days. You got to take the over.
I like it. I like it.
Over
Well,
or
that's a
under on
great
a week
transition
though.
here.
Over
'Cause
under
let's
on a
get into our
week.
bet
I'm gonna
segment.
take.
Oh,
I'm
on
gonna
a
take
week?
under. I'm gonna take the under on a
Take
week.
the under. You think it's canceled within a week? Ooh, I don't know. I'm taking the over. I think they're gonna
Okay.
drag it out. I think it'd be smart if they canceled it under, but I think they're gonna take the over. But let's get into our bet segment here because that's kind of the last thing we've got for today, and it's starting to get good. Zach heated up last week, so he hit on both of his bets, which gets him onto a 3-game win streak,
Let's go.
and he jumped up by $32, which puts him
Big
at
wins.
52.60 now in second place. Right behind me, he's really starting to close that gap, which has me a little bit nervous. I'm still at 89.09. Zach and I both hit on that same bet on the Suns Wizards. The other one Zach hit on was LeBron and Kawhi over 4.5 combined threes, which won him $7. So that was a solid one as well. Marshall, on the other hand, has not had any bets resolved since the last episode. Both of his are currently pending. He actually has 4 pending bets, so he's either in last by a mile or he's about to catch all of us when some of these start to hit. So he's at 310 right now. He's got a 4-6 record, but like I said, those 4 pending bets could swing him one way or the other. Zach's record, I believe, at 5-6. Is that
Yeah,
right?
we're getting closer to 500.
No,
here.
6-7. You're 6-7. You're
Okay.
one game
One
back.
pending.
One back from, and you've got 6-7 with 1 pending. So if you can get that pending one, you're at 500, and you got this week to get you back up there.
Mhm.
I am at, that would be 9-3. So I also have 2 bets pending. We'll see how those go. Hopefully this week I can win, and I've got a 6-week win streak going. So hopefully I can build on that a little bit, and I like my bet quite a bit for this week, so I'll get right into that. And like I said, Zach took Kawhi and LeBron over 4.5 threes. I'm going a similar angle, and I'm taking Lillard and Tatum over 7.5 threes, and that's on the game going on today, so Sunday. So our viewers will know how this one has played out. It's plus 115 on the odds boost, boosted from even odds. Just a little bit of an odds boost, but in that range where I feel like it's helpful. So I like this one. I think it's got a really solid chance of happening, and hopefully it can extend me another week.
Absolutely.
So what is your bet for today, Marshall?
So I am taking the Florida Panthers to beat the New York Islanders on Tuesday at plus 112 odds. I really like the Panthers. I've said it before. And I just think they have too much talent, too much offensive firepower to not at least steal a couple games from the Islanders.
Yeah, I think they've got a solid chance. They need Bob to step up for him, and he played all right in that first game. He did not play all right in the exhibition, so we'll see. It's not too much to read into quite yet, but we'll have to wait and see how he does. There's also a chance that if the Islanders do steal game 2, I believe that'd be game 3. So if the Panthers go into that down 2 games, I think they probably win it just out of desperation alone. So I actually do like that bet quite a bit.
Thank you for the kind words of encouragement.
All right, Zach, what are you going for this week?
All right, so I'm going with the hometown heroes, our boys in the restart, the Avalanche.
Hey.
And I'm doing the same game parlay here, and I told Marshall I'm not betting on the over/under on goals anymore. But this one to me is a lock. Over 3.5 in the game. That's definitely gonna happen. And I got the Avs to win in regulation. So that's the one I'm a little bit worried about. I could see this game taking to overtime or shootout for sure. But I think the Avs end up taking the win.
I love
Sweet.
it, and we'll be able to see it live on our watch party,
Yes,
which,
yes.
as the viewers see this, has already happened. But make sure you're there for the next one.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, boys.
All right, boys. Any last thoughts anyone has before we go ahead and get out of here?
I don't think
Go
Antonio.
Avs, go!
Yes, that, but I also don't think Antonio Brown's ever going to play another NFL game.
I don't
Yeah, I
think
guess
so
we'll-
either, which is why I didn't even bring it up. I was like,
Yeah.
so he's suspended 8 games, for anyone that's wondering. He told us he retired like 2 weeks ago, and then he said that he wasn't retired, and I don't know. I also, at this point, I have lost interest, and I think that most NFL teams have also lost interest. I would be very surprised to see him suit up again.
Yeah. But yeah, that's my those are my last closing thoughts there.
I like it. Zach, do you have like a Cale Makar for Calder or something to say to us?
I guess a Nathan McKinnon for Hart will work for today's episode.
Or maybe
okay.
Colorado Avalanche for the Stanley.
Oh, I like that too. Yeah.
I don't think you can say that. I think that's one where you're jinxing it, right?
That's just like saying, let's
There you go.
have a
Knock on
shutout
wood.
tonight, boys.
Boys, everyone's got a knock on wood now.
All right, we all knocked on wood. We're all good here. We didn't jinx anything. It's not our fault. All right. So thank you to everyone for listening or viewing wherever you're at. You know, we are on YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, anywhere you listen to your podcasts. Check out the rest of the Off-Brand Network, where you've got our sports podcast, you've got our Top 10 podcast, and I've got a channel that I've been posting on a little bit. So check out whatever sounds interesting to you, and we'll see you in our next episode.